Thank you, Mayor. I haven't spoken tonight, except very briefly, about the university, but this is an issue that I care passionately about, and I'm going to ask for your indulgence. I know we've been here for 6 hours, but I want you to try and hear me out. In this motion, Councillor McCann is referring, I suppose, to last week's and this week's attempt by pro-abortion MPs in Westminster to substantively change our laws here in the North, which protect the health and safety of both mothers and their unborn babies, and which we know have saved the lives of, at a conservative estimate, 100,000 of our people, our neighbours, our friends, our comrades, since the introduction of the Act in Britain. I, on behalf of those who elected me and on behalf of my party, aim to oppose this motion. There are 3 strands on which I base my objections. I take what people have said about the 2 things being conflated, which makes it difficult, but I'm going to just confine myself to discussion about the right to life, which is the most fundamental and basic human right of all. Firstly, we assume, since everybody here sought electoral mandates from their people, that they must have some respect for the democratic process. We know that, in accord with the Good Friday Agreement, abortion is a devolved matter to be legislated for by our local institutions. As an Irish Republican, I want self-determination for the people I represent. Many of us who witnessed the pain and heartbreak that the decades of struggle for national sovereignty brought upon our communities now wonder, watching the antics of new Sinn Féin, what was it all about? We looked on in disbelief and anger as our supposedly Republican representatives travelled cap in hand to Westminster to ask them to legislate in our country, to beg English MPs to impose their laws on our land. They won't take their seats, but they're happy to use proxy votes. History there. Colm Eastwood travelled too, presumably afraid of being out virtue signalled on this issue. He travelled in a personal capacity, I must add that. None of the Republicans which I knew who fought and died or spent decades in jail did it for this. I recently watched a video clip of the late Martin McGuinness not too long before his untimely death, and Martin said, and I quote, "Make no doubt about it, Sinn Féin is a pro-life party." His successor wasn't long about changing that. At the last election, as recently as May of this year, Sinn Féin were very coy about reproductive rights stuff. It wasn't prominent in their election literature or public pronouncements, and indeed the canvassers who came to my door, whom I've known for 30, maybe 40 years, told me they were pro-life. So I told them, "You're in the wrong party, lads." We all know that if abortion is decriminalised in the North, it will be largely Sinn Féin's doing, with help from PBP and people, marginal groups like that. What Derry needs is jobs, education, infrastructure, sign-off for a medical school, not culture wars that have little or no relevance to the 7,000 households that we canvassed in Ballyarnett or the wider district. As they did with welfare reform, Sinn Féin will ask the Brits to do their dirty work and then cry foul. If the Assembly is not reconvened by the 21st of October, all protection for unborn children up to 28 weeks gestation will be removed. Tá Gaeilge agam sa, dóla mé mar dana fasta, agus tá mí lífa sa teangaí, agus just mar ólais dana na bailan seo, sé Gaeilge fa hinne ban a teag per clunne na beag an bre, agus cílíonn sin alive without birth. There is no international treaty or law which states that abortion is a human right. That's a fact. CEDAW, the Committee on the Eradication of Discrimination Against Women, is a non-elected advisory quango with no democratic mandate whatsoever. In a British Supreme Court judgment 2 years ago, it was ruled, and I quote, that their opinion carries little weight in international law. If this law comes here, badgers and birds' eggs will have more protection in this country than pre-born human children. That a bill introduced to deal with the timing of an election was hijacked to impose this is fundamentally undemocratic. And also that they were advised that the actual substantive motion, abortion had nothing to do with the substantive motion. It was just parliamentary protocol was overturned, and without proper debate and scrutiny, it was rushed through without any scrutiny whatsoever. The second reason I oppose this motion is because I know abortion is not healthcare, and healthcare is a subject I know a bit about. It kills babies and it very often harms women. The Republic of Ireland, with the protection of the unborn in the Constitution, had one of the lowest maternal mortality rates in this world and were recognised as a leading force in obstetric care. Senior obstetricians repeatedly testified that they were never prevented from acting in the best interest of a mother by law. A heart transplant has been successfully undertaken in a pregnant woman. Cancer chemotherapy is absolutely standard in a pregnant woman. With regard to mental health issues, robust evidence now exists to show that suicide and self-harm rate plummets in women who are pregnant. Conversely, a study in Finland published in 2017 showed a 6 times higher rate of completed suicide in women who aborted their children as compared to those who gave birth. In none of the medical literature, and this has been extensively looked at, in none of the medical literature is abortion provision cited as a treatment for mental illness. But ideologues don't do science, do they? The name of Savita Halappanavar was used by a shameless media and funded campaigners to tell the lie that the Eighth Amendment killed women. This despite 3 separate inquiries finding that Ms Halappanavar died of sepsis mismanaged on 13 occasions. Sepsis is, of course, after haemorrhage, the commonest cause of maternal mortality worldwide, and the inquiries recommended a new maternity strategy to protect women against such failures. Since the change in the law in the South, 2 women have died in Irish maternity hospitals with never a word about them, never mind candlelit vigils and tear-jerking newspaper editorials. The funding to implement the recommended strategy to improve maternal health has been cut to fund abortion services. With regard to the babies, I've worked in perinatal intensive care for a year. I trained in paediatrics, with wee ones who were born many way before the 28 weeks limit, which this bill will remove protection from. They felt pain, they hated us taking blood from them, they fought us, they hated us for putting tubes in them. Yet this bill will allow them to be dismembered and taken piecemeal from their mother's womb without even pain relief. This is barbarism. These were members of the human race. These children are members of the human race, and have as much entitlement to be on this planet as any person in this room. As a GP, I've helped hundreds of women through pregnancy, most celebrating the new life within, but some in despair as to how they're going to cope. But even in the most desperate of cases, I've never had a woman come back to me and say, "I wish I'd aborted that child." Never. And I've had some, not all obviously, who've induced abortion and have suffered and regretted that decision for the rest of their lives. I've one very young patient who's a mother of a small baby, and she says, every time I look at that child, I remember that it's my second child. To decriminalise abortion leaves the unborn child, the place where we all began, without any protection whatsoever. Eamon, if these people have their way, every home where children should be safe can now become a backstreet abortion facility. There will be no protection whatsoever. Interestingly, I was handed a leaflet on the way in here from women who claim to care about women's health, saying, "Don't tell your doctors that you've used the pills. Just say you're having a miscarriage." How dare they ask that people lie to the providers of medical care? I don't know who produced that rag, but I wouldn't. Anyway. Our hospitals, places of care and healing, become places where babies can be killed up to the stage of their development when they can live and breathe independently, and those who don't expire as protected will be left to die in kidney dishes. I have here a copy of a book. I'll wave books about. It's called the British National Formulary, and it's a book that doctors use to keep safe. It's about safe prescribing. And I have here mifepristone, which is the drug which is used to terminate pregnancies. There are 5 licensed indications for it. In each one, medical termination of intrauterine pregnancy up to 49 days gestation under close medical supervision. Now, not so long ago, we had a group of women, Derry women, none of whom I don't think unplanned pregnancy is going to be an issue for, but they were out in the streets peddling these pills, offering people credit facilities. Those are the people who should be criminalised for putting women's lives and health in danger. Without any medical care or supervision. The narrative.
Can I ask the member to bring our remarks to a close? Yeah. Members, just to remind them they've got 5 minutes to speak on the motion. Yeah. The narrative of my body, my choice is nonsense, and biology tells us that there are 2 human persons with distinct genetics, with distinct blood groups. The sex is different, and even children know that the writing of males out of the human story of procreation is pernicious nonsense. Fathers matter. They're 50% of who we are.
The alarming rate of suicide and self-harming behaviour in young males may be related to this exclusion of them as co-creators of their children and relegating them to essentially being sperm donors. The third reason I oppose this, and this is important, I'll say this as quickly as I can, I'm a pro-life feminist of the left. We in Aontú are pro-life for all of life. There has been no class-based analysis of this complex issue. It is a fact that abortion disproportionately affects the poor, ethnic minorities and people who are disabled. Many women have their choice in bodily autonomy limited by government policies and systemic injustice, which are less important to political parties in their own promotion and participation in culture wars.
The member bring her remarks to a close, please.
People before profit are now marching in tune with some of the most right-wing and anti-people forces on the planet. They essentially promulgate
Councillor McCloskey,
a cull on the
latitude. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to ask
and offer no choice to women in crisis. Planned Parenthood and Marie Stopes internationally are putting women's lives and health at risk. They don't worry about miscarriage or hemorrhage. The only choice they can offer women is abortion.
I'm going to have to stop you there.
The most lethal of fatal fetal abnormalities is to be female. 400 million female are killed worldwide.